Hi guys, welcome back to my next episode featuring traditional painting. This time it's gouache turn. As you probably already know, I made two works from one digital sketch, one in watercolor and other one in gouache. This way I tried working two different styles, largely dictated by the properties of the materials I was working with, watercolor and gouache. This painting depicts two of my original characters, a warrior girl and a princess. I'll leave a link to the watercolor painting below in the description. And today is a tone of a gouache painting. But first, let's try Holbein 18 colors basic gouache set together. The entire gouache painting was done using only this set, plus a couple more Winsor and Newton paints. But I'm sure the Winsor and Newton paints could have been omitted that. We'll swatch all these paints together. I'll share my impressions and demonstrate the painting process. So let's get started. And here is a basic set of gouache from Holbein, which contains 18 colors. And I must say the set is very well composed. It contains all the necessary colors to create a complete drawing with the required richness of colors and shades. And also here are three colors from Winsor and Newton I have here for you to show you, as I used them as well in this painting. Here's a wet palette I made myself, and you can make one very easily too. I take a regular plate and place a paper towel dampened with water on top, and on top I have parchment paper, so it's a homemade wet palette. And I can say that the paint on it doesn't dry for a long time, up to an hour, so it's enough for your work. If you place this palette in closed container, like a food container, and wrap it with cling film, my experience has shown that the paint inside doesn't dry for at least a week. And this works for both gouache and acrylic gouache. Meanwhile, this is a red Alizarin crimson from Winsor Newton, based on Pigment Red 83. It's semi-opaque and has a fair light fastness, but as I cannot imagine my palette without this beautiful color, I use it. The next color I want to show you is Primary Blue by Winsor Newton, based on Pigment Blue 15. It's opaque and has an excellent light fastness. I also used Winsor and Newton permanent white in this painting. I can say that it's more transparent and runnier in consistency than the Holbein permanent white from the set, but it works well and easily in mixtures, mixing quickly with other colors. And here we go to the Flame Red from the Holbein set based on Pigment Red 9. It has semi-opaque transparency and fair light fastness. But in general, this light fastness shouldn't scare you a lot if your work will be digitized later. The next color is Carmine by Winsor Newton based on Pigment Red 170. It's semi-opaque and has a fair light fastness. This way, the set has one warm and one cool red. The same applies to the blues and the yellows. So each pair has one warm and one cool tone, which is wonderful for mixing colors. Actually, the paint mixes perfectly, produces clean tones, and works exactly as I expect. Let's move on to blue colors. And the next color is Ultramarine Deep, based on Pigment Blue 29. It's opaque and it has a good light fastness. Actually, in fact, I can say that it is more sheer when first applied, but it can be easily layered to a rich blue tone. Our next color is turquoise blue based on three pigments: blue 28, white 6, green 7 and blue 15. It's semi-opaque and has a fair light fastness. And if our previous blue was warm blue, then this one is cool blue in our palette. By the way, it's immediately noticeable when there is white pigment in the paint. The paint lays down much more densely. Our next paint is leaf green based on three pigments: yellow 3, green 7 and yellow 1. It's semi-opaque and has a fair light fastness. Despite the fact that it is based on three pigments, it is great in mixtures. It is a cheerful, bright yellow-green color. Our next color is lemon yellow based on pigment yellow 3. It's semi-transparent and has a fair light fastness. It seems very warm compared to the previous one, but you will see that it is actually quite cool color. Now I want to show you one of my favorite dark violet mixtures based on blue and red that I have here. It's carmine as a red and ultramarine deep as a blue. Your purple will be closer to the red side or darker and closer to the blue side, depending on which color you add more. The next color is very warm, permanent yellow deep, based on pigment yellow 1. It's semi-transparent and has a fair light fastness. Our next color is ivory black, based on pigment black 6. It's opaque and has an excellent light fastness. I rarely used it, preferring to mix the blacks by myself with some Prussian blue, but I still wanted to show you this black. The next color is violet, based on two pigments, blue 29 and violet 15. It's semi-opaque and unfortunately fugitive. I don't really like using this purple from the set. Actually, I prefer to mix the purple by myself. Also, it's very similar to magenta from the set, which I'll show you a bit later. Our next color is burnt sienna, based on pigment brown 7 and pigment red 101. It's opaque and has an excellent light fastness. I didn't use this color in this painting, but it's only because I didn't need it this time. Let's move to Brilliant Orange. Based on pigment orange 103, it's semi-transparent and unfortunately also fugitive. But it's pretty bright and beautiful color, so I agree to use it. Now we have magenta, which I promised to show you. Of course, it's fugitive, it's based on pigment violet 15 and it's semi-transparent. Our next color is yellow ochre, based on yellow 42 and yellow 43. It's opaque and has an excellent light fastness. This one, like the previous color, was among those that I didn't use in this my painting. Also, I find this color very useful. Our next color is burnt umber, based on pigment brown 7. It's opaque and has an excellent light fastness. Also didn't use it this time, but it's beautiful. In fact, none of my dark mixtures for this painting were complete without this one color. It's Prussian blue based on pigment blue 327. It's opaque and has a fair color light fastness, but I love this color. And here I want to show you that beautiful violet black mixture that replaces for me pure black in this work, and that is obtained by mixing this Prussian blue with one of reds with alizarin crimson. Our next color is emerald green based on two pigments, yellow 3 and green 7. It's opaque and has a fair light fastness. And the next deeper green seemed quite special to me. It's permanent green deep based on three pigments, yellow 3, green 7 and blue 15. It's opaque and has a fair light fastness. It's very special to me because when mixed with lemon yellow or warm yellow we have in this set, it produces beautiful clean greens. And I want to show you these mixtures here. And here are all our swatches from today with Holbein set plus a couple of colors from Winsor and Newton and some mixtures I did. I didn't even use all these colors from this set for my painting and yet managed to paint a full picture with a lot of shades and tones. This says how well this set is built. And now let's move on directly to the painting. First, I carefully transferred my digital sketch to the watercolor paper I plan to paint on. To save time and avoid damaging paper, I did this using a light screen. This is a pencil sketch on a cold pressed watercolor paper. I apply paper tape to create a beautiful borders for the painting and to prevent the paper from warping. As a backing, I used an album with a thick cardboard cover. But still, this backing turned out to be not dense enough. Since I didn't expect to use much water in this painting, I was hoping for a drier technique with gouache, so I didn't secure my sheet tightly enough, which I actually regretted later. I decided that next time I'll use a larger surface as a backing. A board wood works well, I think. And I secure my sheet better to prevent the paper from warping. In this video, I tried not to speed up the recording too much, but instead carefully cut out all the parts where I was picking up and mixing paint. This montage is quite time consuming, but I hope it will help you better understand the painting process. For now, I apply the base tones. It's a fairly transparent base for the next richer color layers. What is really nice about this gouache is that it doesn't change its saturation too much, doesn't have this color shift a lot when it dries. By the way, the paint doesn't have a strong smell that would irritate me. Therefore, I think that for people who have an allergic reaction to paint, it will not be a problem to work with this paint. Gouache is a new medium to work for me. Overall, I can say that I got a lot of pleasure from the work, despite the fact that, especially at the beginning, I struggled with the medium. In fact, this is my first big work with gouache. Before this, there was only one sketch, but despite all this, I got great pleasure working with gouache. This was a wonderful adventure, and I can fully recommend this paint set. The advantage of a limited palette is that the color scheme in the painting appears cohesive, unified. Each color is related to the others. All the more complex colors are related by being built on the same simpler colors. But with all this wonderful pros, the limited palette has one disadvantage. You have to spend a lot of time mixing paints. I mix a small amount of paint each time I need to speed things up and keep the paint from drying. And as I was working, I thought it would be convenient to have a pre-purchased, pre-mixed light blue, a blue with lots of white pigment, so I wouldn't have to mix it each time, as well as some light turquoise, which is green with white added, and maybe some light pink. I must say, I need this kind of paint very often to desaturate colors or just as some light colors. Perhaps I need some premixed but pastel paint. With it, I felt like I could greatly speed up my work. Of course, I'll still change the tone a little. I'll still shift it by adding white or some other colors, but having a ready-made light base will speed up my process. Now I'm gradually increasing the tone, meaning that light colors, when applied over dark ones, will no longer be so light. Therefore, if you want some areas to look especially light, it's better to paint it that way right away. Another thing that can significantly speed up the work is painting on smooth paper with a satin surface. This time I used cold pressed rough watercolor paper from Arches. It's my favorite paper for watercolor painting as well. A great advantage of this paper is that the paint flows very smoothly, leaving no sharp, defined edges. With this paper, you can create beautiful washes, smooth fills, and gradients. This won't happen with satin paper or hot pressed paper, where will be very obvious fill borders and there won't be such soft gradients. So I decided that I was willing to sacrifice some extra time for painting to achieve the result I wanted. The size of your painting also affects the time it takes to paint. Of course, a smaller painting will take much less time. However, a larger format helps you work out fine details more clearly. This is especially true for watercolors and if you work on rough paper. Also, a larger format provides more practice opportunities. One of the important features of painting on rough paper is that it takes a bit more water and paint. If you need to apply a thick and dense layer of paint at once with one stroke, you have to get used to how much paint it takes up. You have to get used to how much water and how much paint you need to have on your brush so the paint strokes go on easily. It helps a lot to apply a base layer. Even a translucent layer of underpaint will help a lot. The key is to give the underpainting time to dry, otherwise it will mix with the next layer. Gouache can be easily reactivated with water by the next layer. Therefore, the next layer, and it's a classic rule, should be thicker than the previous one. This time I used a technique with a fairly small amount of water, and because of this I didn't actually stretch my paper. For my next painting I think about combining wet and dry techniques, using a base layer to apply more diffuse fills with a large amount of water, and then using dense layers of color in the following layers. And for this I'll need to stretch the paper properly. Also, since I was limited in my ability to apply water due to the lack of stretch on the canvas, I used stiffer brushes that held much less water. On the other hand, stiffer brushes mix paint faster and better and press the paint onto the paper more tightly. So, depending on the brushes, your strokes and your whole painting will look different. Round brushes hold much more water. I would like this painting style to be stylistically reminiscent of stained glass. These individual strokes of a flat brush should create the effect of individual panes of stained glass. The stained glass won't have very smooth color transitions. However, the transition is still perceived as quite smooth because there is a color shift between the colors of the glass. The color seems to play and shimmer, and this is the effect I wanted to achieve. The stained glass won't have very smooth lines, so using a flat brush helps me create this effect. The lines will be more graphic and rough. I gradually, piece by piece, stroke by stroke, build up the shadows and shades. To cover large areas with paint and there less detail is needed, I use a flat, larger brush. And next, when I need to work on small details, I take a thin and round brush. For my next painting, I think about combine this stained glass style in some areas, for example, on the background with smoother, more watercolor-like washes on the characters' figures and clothing. I think it'll be pretty interesting. I try to work with one color for as long as the logic of the painting allows me. It's a definite limitation, but it saves a lot of time on mixing paint. It also helps me to have multiple brushes for multiple colors, multiple main colors that I'm working with right now. Each painting is a separate new world with its own laws, the master of which is the artist himself. The painting comes to life right under your hands. You yourself never know exactly what will happen, and it's captivating. You can find an extended video of the full painting process on my Patreon. It's available with every tier. At the end, I added a few strokes and refined some lines with watercolor pencils. In principle, this wasn't necessary, but I decided to experiment. Also, I could have done without it. The pencils added some interesting additional texture and made the details clearer. If you like this painting and this topic, please like and subscribe to my channel so you don't miss my next videos. Well, my work is ready. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you learned something interesting for you or just had a good time. Hope to see you soon in my next episode. Have a wonderful day or night. Bye bye.